the world awoke to a headline that shattered assumptions. Hungary and Greece formally apply to join BRICS. It was a moment that few had predicted, a move that seemed to upend decades of European unity and the established order. Overnight, the familiar landscape of alliances and partnerships was thrown into question, as two nations at the heart of Europe signaled their intent to pivot toward a new global bloc. The announcement, coordinated between Budapest and Athens, sent shockwaves through Europe and beyond. In city squares and government offices, the news was met with disbelief, curiosity, and anxiety. Conversations buzzed in cafes and on public transport as citizens tried to make sense of what this meant for their future. For decades, the EU and NATO were the ultimate destinations for European nations, symbols of stability, prosperity, and shared values. Membership was seen as a guarantee of security and a ticket to the modern world, a hard-won prize after years of struggle and reform. Now, two member states were reaching for the door of a rival bloc led by China and Russia. The implications were profound. This was not just a diplomatic maneuver, but a signal that the gravitational pull of the West was weakening and that new centers of power were emerging. Their statements spoke of sovereignty and economic diversification, insisting this was not a rejection of Europe, but an embrace of a changing world. They argued that in an era of shifting alliances and global uncertainty, it was prudent to keep options open and build bridges beyond traditional partners. But no diplomatic language could hide the challenge to Brussels and Washington. The move was seen as a direct test of Western unity, a provocation that demanded a response from the established powers. For the first time, Western insiders were seeking a seat at the competition's table. This was not just about economics or trade, but about influence, identity, and the future direction of the continent. Social media exploded with Brexit and EU shock. Markets tumbled. The euro dipped. Investors scrambled to assess the risks, while analysts debated whether this was a temporary tremor or the start of a seismic shift in global finance. This wasn't a sudden impulse. It was the result of years of friction, disagreements over policy, values, and the direction of the European project. Tensions had simmered beneath the surface, occasionally erupting into protests and political standoffs. Hungary, under Viktor Orban, had long clashed with the EU over democracy and the rule of law. Orban's government often found itself at odds with Brussels, resisting pressure to conform to EU standards and asserting its own vision of national sovereignty. Greece, scarred by its debt crisis, had quietly deepened economic ties with China. Chinese investment flowed into Greek ports and infrastructure, offering a lifeline when European support felt conditional and slow. The timing was strategic. BRICS was gaining momentum, expanding into a true counterweight to the G7. The bloc's growing influence offered an alternative vision for global cooperation, one that appealed to countries feeling sidelined by Western institutions. Leaders in Budapest and Athens saw a chance to leverage their position, betting that in a world with no single dominant power, smaller nations could chart new paths. They hoped to gain more autonomy, more bargaining power, and a greater say in shaping the future. But it was a high-stakes gamble. The risks were enormous: political isolation, economic retaliation, and the uncertainty of aligning with a bloc whose long-term stability was far from guaranteed. They had set fire to the old rulebook, and no one knew what the new rules would be. The established order was in flux, and the consequences of this bold move were impossible to predict. The world held its breath, waiting for the next move. Diplomats scrambled behind closed doors, while ordinary people watched events unfold with a mix of hope and apprehension. The post-Cold War order had cracked. The certainties of the past were gone, replaced by a new era of competition and unpredictability. The future of Europe and the global balance was suddenly up for grabs. Every decision, every alliance, now carried new weight as the world watched to see which way the scales would tip. The shockwaves had only just begun. The story of Europe's fracture was still being written, and its outcome would shape the world for years to come. In Brussels, disbelief quickly turned to panic as the news broke across the continent. The city, often seen as the heart of European decision-making, was suddenly gripped by uncertainty and confusion. The European Commission scrambled for answers, holding emergency meetings late into the night. Officials debated next steps, their faces tense as they tried to maintain composure in front of a relentless press corps. The move was seen as a public act of defiance, threatening the very idea of European unity that had been carefully built over decades. In Washington, leaders were blindsided, caught off guard by the sudden shift in alliances. Two NATO allies openly courting China and Russia. For security experts, it was nothing short of a nightmare scenario, raising urgent questions about the future of transatlantic defense and trust. The White House issued a terse warning, urging all parties to remember their commitments to shared values and mutual defense. Behind closed doors, American officials scrambled to assess the fallout. In Beijing and Moscow, the mood was triumphant. Crowds celebrated in the streets, and government buildings lit up in national colors, marking what they saw as a historic turning point. State media in both countries hailed the news as undeniable proof of Western decline and the rise of a new global order, with headlines proclaiming a seismic shift in world politics. BRICS leaders welcomed the applications enthusiastically, touting their bloc as an open, inclusive alternative to the old Western-dominated system. They promised a new era of cooperation and opportunity. In New Delhi, Brasilia, and Pretoria, reactions were cautious but supportive. Leaders expressed hope for a more balanced world, yet remained wary of being drawn into a direct West versus East confrontation that could destabilize their own regions. For developing nations, the move was a powerful symbol. It showed that even Europe's core was no longer locked into the Western orbit, inspiring debates about sovereignty and new possibilities for global partnerships. The global balance of power was shifting before everyone's eyes, and new options were emerging for countries long on the sidelines. The world's political landscape was being redrawn in real time. The world was watching and recalculating. In capitals and living rooms alike, people wondered what this meant for the future and whether old certainties could still be trusted. The old alliances no longer seemed unbreakable. A new era of uncertainty and opportunity had begun, with the world holding its breath for what would come next. Hungary and Greece's move is more than a diplomatic maneuver. It's a seismic crack in the Western order. For decades, the EU and NATO were the cornerstones of a system presumed permanent. Now, two members are seeking alternatives, exposing deep fractures. The symbolic power of their applications legitimizes BRICS as a real rival to Western institutions. The global map is no longer simple. Allegiances are shifting, and economic interests trump old alliances. The appeal of the Western model has faded, tarnished by crises and internal divisions. Hungary and Greece are not just leaving, they're responding to a world where the old certainties are gone. BRICS began as an economic acronym: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and later South Africa. It evolved into a geopolitical bloc, challenging Western dominance in global governance. BRICS created its own institutions, like the New Development Bank, offering alternatives to Western loans. The bloc's core principles, sovereignty, non-interference, appeal to countries frustrated with Western oversight. Recent expansions have made BRICS a powerful coalition, representing a huge share of global population and GDP. For Hungary and Greece, joining BRICS is a bet on a future where power is shifting eastward. They're not just making a statement, they're seeking new partners and new leverage. The global order is being rewritten. Hungary and Greece, though shaped by different histories and ambitions, now find themselves united by a growing sense of disillusionment with the West. Both nations are searching for new paths, driven by frustration and a desire for greater autonomy in a rapidly changing world. For Hungary, Prime Minister Viktor Orbán's Eastern opening policy has become a bold gambit, one that seeks to leverage closer ties with Russia and China as a way to gain leverage over Brussels and the European Union. Orbán's government is determined to carve out a more independent role for Hungary on the global stage. Chinese investment and Russian energy deals have already deepened Hungary's eastern connections, bringing in billions of dollars, and reshaping the country's economic landscape. These partnerships are not just about economics, they're about signaling a willingness to look beyond traditional Western alliances. Greece's move, on the other hand, is rooted in the deep economic trauma of the past decade. The country's financial crisis and the years of harsh austerity measures imposed by its Western creditors left lasting scars on Greek society. The debt crisis and the painful austerity that followed created a hunger for independence and a determination to never again be so vulnerable to outside pressure. Many Greeks still remember the protests and the sense of national humiliation. China's massive investment in the port of Piraeus was a turning point, showing Athens that there were real alternatives to relying solely on Western partners. The port's transformation has become a symbol of Greece's search for new opportunities. Now, The BRICS alliance offers Greece a chance to diversify its economic relationships, seeking funding and new markets without the strict conditions imposed by the EU and international lenders. It's a strategic move to regain control over its own destiny. Both Hungary and Greece are hedging their bets, refusing to put all their eggs in the Western basket. By engaging with new partners, they hope to balance their interests and protect their sovereignty in an unpredictable world. Ultimately, it's a search for sovereignty, a pragmatic response to a world where old alliances are shifting and new opportunities are emerging. Both countries are determined to shape their own futures, no matter how uncertain the global landscape may be. The scars of the past are driving a new strategy for the future, as Hungary and Greece chart bold new courses in pursuit of security, prosperity, and national pride. The applications create a legal and security nightmare for the EU and NATO. Can a country belong to both the EU and a rival bloc like BRICS? There's no precedent, and no easy answer. NATO's trust is shaken. Sensitive military planning and intelligence sharing are now in question. The EU's single market could fragment if Hungary and Greece align with BRICS trade policies. Legal challenges, penalties, and political crises loom. The EU's unity and global influence are at risk. For the US, managing a split within its core alliances becomes a diplomatic headache. The fallout will dominate international agendas for years. Experts are divided. Many in the West see Hungary and Greece's move as a catastrophic miscalculation, trading real benefits for uncertain gains. Economic retaliation and political isolation could follow, leaving both countries in a dangerous gray zone. But others, especially outside the West, see a shrewd strategy hedging bets in a multipolar world. BRICS membership offers new capital, markets, and leverage. For Greece, it could mean investment in shipping and tourism. For Hungary, a hub for Chinese manufacturing. Both could secure long-term energy deals. Success depends on balancing East and West, without being torn apart by competing demands. The stakes are enormous. The outcome will shape Europe's future. The shock opens three possible futures for the global order. First, consolidation and containment. The West unites, reforms, and isolates defectors, leading to a new two-bloc competition. Second, fragmentation and free-for-all. The EU and NATO splinter, alliances become transactional, and global problems go unsolved. Third, Berlin, the multiplex world. Hungary and Greece straddle both blocs, forcing all sides to adapt to a messier, more pluralistic system. Each scenario carries risks and opportunities. The reality will likely be a mix, requiring immense diplomatic skill. The world could become more flexible, or more unstable. The choices made now will define the century. The future is open, unpredictable, and up for grabs. The global order is at a crossroads. The next moves will determine everything. The world is watching. December 9th, 2025, a turning point in modern history. Hungary and Greece's BRICS applications are more than headlines. They mark a profound transformation. The certainties of the past 30 years, Western supremacy, liberal democracy, and the centrality of Washington and Brussels are shaken. The future is uncertain, filled with peril and promise. The West faces a reckoning address, internal weaknesses, or risk irrelevance. Hungary and Greece's move is a brutal reminder that dominance is not permanent. The world is in flux, the unipolar moment is over, and a new order is being born. Whether it's conflict, fragmentation, or pluralism, the choices made now will shape the century. We are living through history's hinge, and the world will never be the same. The only certainty is change.